Thank you, Phil, for ringing the gong. My name is Doyle Dobbins, and I'm the worship associate for today. So I welcome you to our service, both here in the sanctuary and online. We're pleased that you can join us. Now, generally we describe ourselves a little bit, and I think of us as being very diverse. We're a very diverse group of people. I mean, you think about it, all the different things we believe, all the different kinds of foods we like. Some of us are short, some of us are tall, some of us somewhere in between. So we are very diverse. And we're diverse in whom we love and what we believe. And that's good. But we also have a lot of things in common. I think we all search for the truth. We want to fulfill our mission as a church body. And I suspect that we have lots of other things in common too. Like I'll mention just a couple very quickly. How many of you saw the game last night for the Phillies? I suspect that most of us are Phillies fans. Wouldn't you agree? So we have that in common. Well, whether you like our diversity or you like our commonness, you are welcome to our service today. And I'd like to begin by inviting Phil to make a special announcement.
Thanks, Doyle. Can everybody hear me okay? So I'm Phil Crape. I'm chair of the steering committee for the Whole Congregation Strategic Planning Summit, which is coming up November 11th and 12th. By then, the Phillies will have won the World Series. So there'll be nothing more important for you to do these days than attend the summit. Strategic planning is really, really important here because it's how we decide to focus our resources, our people, and our money to do the work of the church. It's also important that you register for the summit so we can figure out how many tables to set up and how much coffee to make and really important things like that. So if you would please, you can sign up online. The e-news has a link for you to go to register, or I'll be in the back there and I can sign you up then. So please sign up and attend. It's important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Phil. That's an important announcement. But I have a few more important announcements. And the first one is that today is our kickoff Sunday for Guests at Your Table. Now, if you think about it and you look around the sanctuary here a little bit, I'm sorry, you might not be able to do that if you're at home, but do you remember these cute little boxes? Well, at the top of it says Guests at Your Table. And the Guests at Your Table is a program that's sponsored by, shared with us, and that we promote in our church every year in conjunction with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Now, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee also is known as UUSC. So you'll see UUSC in various places, in fact, like right here. So UUSC is another name. Sometimes we refer to it just as the Service Committee. But Guests at Your Table is a very important program, and it's one of the ways that we connect with a worldwide program, and by being connected and in partnership with them, we can make a difference in the world. Now today, we have something else that's a little bit unique. Beverley and I, Beverley Baxter is our guest speaker today. Now, most of us know Beverley is just Beverley. And most of you probably know that we're related, that we've been married for over 60 years. But, you know, now that wasn't the purpose of that announcement. I wanted to say that my life is full of stories, and I suspect yours is too. And one of the stories is my relationship with Beverley. And every once in a while, since we use different last names, somebody is surprised when they realize, oh, the two of you are related? Well, that's very interesting. And it has been very interesting, let me tell you, over the years. So we're pleased to have Beverley here with us today to be our guest speaker. And that's part of our Guest at Your Table program and the kickoff emphasis that we want to place on it today. So we will be saying more throughout the service about UUSC, the service committee, and how we can connect with it in a new and possibly different way. So at this point in the service, I would just invite you to prepare yourselves to participate in the service by listening quietly and carefully to the Prelude music. Thank you, Kathy. For our call to worship today, I would like to focus on 3 words, and the 3 words make up the theme of our service and the theme of the Guests at Your Table program, and also the title for Beverley's sermon. Those 3 words are hope, courage, and action. Now, if you think about hope, hopefully we all have hope. Hopefully we can help others have hope. And that's part of what having hope is all about. We connect with other people. We feel good about various activities and things that we're involved in. We may have hope for a new and better world. We can have hope for a lot of things. But the important thing is, I believe we are called to have hope. We're also called to build courage. It's okay to be hopeful, but we got to have courage. We have to have courage to do a whole lot of things, whether it's things that we do here within the church community or in the broader community. We need courage to do things if we want to make a difference in the world. So we are called to build courage. And we are also called to take action. Now, if you think about it, if you have hope and you have courage, the next step is action. And there are a lot of things that we can act upon. And as we act upon what we choose to act upon, hopefully we are choosing to make a difference. So in summary, we are called to worship. We are called to have hope. We are called to build courage. And we are called to take action. And continuing now, this is the point of time in our service when we light our chalice. And if those of you that are connected at home have a chalice, we invite you to light it now as well. As we light the chalice in the sanctuary, I would just like to give you a little indication that the chalice is another way that we are connected with, we are associated with UUSC, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Now, probably most of you didn't know that the chalice was essentially created and crafted back in 1941. And in part it was to recognize what the service committee was doing to help people in Nazi Germany and Czechoslovakia and so forth to get away from the Nazi regime. So we are connected with this chalice in a special sort of way. It goes back to that early time with the service committee. And so today, if we think of that connection, someone has said it this way: May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and substance to the universe, to this world, to this community, and to each other. So, we light this flame, and let's allow it to point us in the direction of being committed to justice for all. And now I'd like to introduce our first hymn, hymn number 170. We are a gentle, angry people, and it's in the blue hymnal. So please stand if you care to do so, but just participate if you are willing in the singing of this hymn.
Gentle
Let us now join together in affirming our mission as it is listed on the screen. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action. At this point in our service, we enter into a time of meditation. And generally, our meditation would focus on kind of ourselves. We take time to look at ourselves, who we are, and so forth. But today, I would like for us to think beyond ourselves for our meditation. Think beyond our community and focus on our world. And imagine what might constitute a just world. A year ago, Mary Catherine Mourn, who is the president and CEO of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, was our guest speaker here. And she talked about having courage, and she talked about the world and what's happening in it, and she emphatically said to us, it takes all of us to build a better world. And that's part of what I want us to kind of meditate on today. It takes all of us to build a better world. Last week, Larry, in his sermon, suggested at one point that we look at ourselves in the mirror. Well, that's an interesting thing to do. It can be helpful. It can be surprising. And it can also open the door for us to kind of examine who we are, what we stand for, and what we want to do, what we might want to do in our community and in our world. And so as we pause, take a moment of silence in this service, I would invite you to symbolically look in that mirror and kind of ask yourself, what do I see there? How is my focus? What do I want to do? What would I like to achieve? How can I team up with others? How can I partner with others to make a difference in the world? Let's have a moment of silence as we reflect on that idea. And now as we move on to what we call prayers for the people, I'd like to again invite you to not think so much about prayers for ourselves, but think about our concerns and share our expression of our concerns for places and people in the world for whom we are concerned. If you think about our world, there's a whole lot of injustice going on in a whole lot of places. Can you name those places? Can you name the people involved in those places? In a moment of silence, in the quietness of our sanctuary, please speak the names of people and places within our world for whom you are concerned. And if you are at home and want to write those places and people in the chat, please do so. Please feel free to speak out the names. Well, as I say, there are many places and peoples that we could name, and possibly we will do that before the service is over. But let us, in this quietness, just realize that the names and the places that were spoken and those unspoken, we wish for them to find justice, peace, and healing. May it be so.
It wasn't until she was in college that Susan Elizabeth Subak learned that the parents of her family's friend had written the affidavit in 1938 for her Jewish father to come to the United States, and were part of the founding of an organization which had worked in Europe during World War II to rescue those targeted by the Nazis. That organization was the Unitarian Service Committee. When she then wrote a term paper on the Holocaust and could find no more than brief references to the Service Committee, she began digging. Her search extended way beyond college, and her years of extraordinary research on the work of Unitarians during World War II led to her book, Rescue and Flight: American Relief Workers Who Defied the Nazis. I'll speak more about Martha and Waitstill Sharp in a moment, but first, the passage I'll read is from Martha Sharp's recounting of March 15, 1939, when German troops entering Prague, and she was watching the endless ranks of soldiers goose-stepping through the main square. She and her husband, Waitstill, were alerted that day that the roundup and arrest of those targeted by the Nazis were underway. From Subak. That evening, Martha found a taxi, and noting that the driver had a companion in the front seat, she gave an address that was near, but not exactly her destination. Ducking into the first dark entrance she encountered, she watched as the occupant of the cab looked up and down the street and walked in her direction. The driver honked, and she realized that her follower must be a Gestapo agent. She flattened herself against the doorway, and in the darkness, he walked right by and headed back to the cab. She soon found the address she was looking for and climbed the dark stairwell. The woman who answered the door on the top floor denied any knowledge of the name that Martha gave her. But when Martha insisted that there was little time and produced her American passport, the man she was looking for soon appeared. Martha and her charge set out on foot in the cold and windy night. But when they reached the bridge over the Vltava, a Nazi soldier stepped out of the shadows to stop them. Martha was ready. "Americans," she said, "en route to the U.S. Embassy," and pulled out her passport. "Gehen," he said. At the other end of the bridge, they were met by another challenge from the first soldier's counterpart, but the same strategy worked. They now had just a half a mile to go before the British Embassy palace came into view. But a Gestapo patrol was stationed at the gate, Martha noted with dismay. As she walked forward, her charge just a step behind, Martha complained loudly that there were no taxis and that they would never have accepted the appointment with the secretary of the embassy if they had known that it meant walking. She politely asked the German guard if he knew whether Mr. Swanson was still in the office, and she apologized that they had been so delayed. "I don't know," he replied in English. Continuing her act, Martha pulled out her passport and asked, "Will you please tell Mr. Swanson that Mr. and Mrs. Sharp are here?" The agent replied, "I am not the embassy guard. He is there. You should ask him." So they walked into the courtyard, rang the bell, and had themselves announced. Those of us who watched on PBS the recent Ken Burns series, A History to be Reckoned with, the U.S. and the Holocaust, were reminded of how the American people grappled with one of the greatest humanitarian crises of the 20th century. This Ken Burns three-part series looks at the disinterest of Americans at what was happening to Jews in Europe, plus the roles of eugenics and racism, as well as xenophobia and anti-Semitism that played in this crisis. It asks the question, why did we fail to rescue a people at a time of their greatest need? But not everyone failed. In February 1939, shortly before the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia, Waitstill and Martha Sharp, a Unitarian minister and his wife from Wellesley, Massachusetts, funded by the American Unitarian Association, left their two small children with dear friends and set out on a vital and dangerous mission. While ostensibly visiting Czech Unitarian churches, Martha and Waitstill were actually helping to arrange safe passage out of Czechoslovakia for prominent Czechs, political activists, artists, academic figures, most of them Jews, whose lives were endangered by the Nazis. The Nazis invaded Prague in March, but the Sharps stayed on at enormous personal risk. After 6 months of harrowing work building their underground railroad and in constant danger that required them to carry their passports at all times in case they needed to escape at a moment's notice, that moment came. After the Gestapo ordered all foreign refugee offices to close, Waitstill left for Switzerland to speak at a liberal religious youth congress, while Martha stayed in Prague to try to continue the work as long as possible. But when she was tipped off that she was going to be arrested, she slipped out of Czechoslovakia. But not before stashing medical and food supplies under the floorboards of the Unitaria, the Prague Unitarian Church. Their report back home, along with news from American Unitarian Association's Robert Dexter in Europe, led to the founding of the Unitarian Service Committee in 1940, predecessor with the Universalist Service Committee that came later, of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, UUSC. The Sharps and others returned to Europe under Service Committee sponsorship and opened offices in neutral Portugal, Switzerland, and unoccupied France. Working with international agencies, they obtained visas and arranged escape for hundreds of refugees fleeing the Nazis. They also organized medical assistance and emergency food shipments for victims of the war, children in particular. Before most Americans cared about what was happening in Europe, the Service Committee members had become deeply involved in the fate of the European intellectuals, activists, Jews, and other groups targeted by Hitler. On September 9th, 2005, Yad Vashem, Israel's official memorial to the victims of the Holocaust and to those who aided them, named Martha and Waitstill Sharp as righteous among the nations, the second and third of only 5 Americans to receive this honor. Back when Newsweek magazine was in paper form, and not just online, each week when I received my copy, I was reminded of the early work of the Service Committee. Mark Whittaker, Newsweek's editor at the time, before he moved on to NBC News and then CNN, is the son of one of the many children Martha personally escorted to the safety of the United States. And I served on the board with his father, who married that survivor Martha Sharp helped. This willingness to provide concrete aid and service where needed and without regard for precedent or popularity has shaped the Service Committee's mission for over 80 years. Throughout its 82-year history, the Service Committee has taken on what I call the sandpaper issues, those issues which are too rough for others to handle. For 82 years, the Service Committee has been a cutting-edge human rights organization going where others feared and doing what others wouldn't. Just as the Service Committee was rescuing those targeted by the Nazis before most Americans were aware of or cared about what Hitler was doing, so the Service Committee was making a difference in El Salvador when few people in the United States knew of or cared about the Central American country the size of Massachusetts. Government-sponsored death squads targeted anyone who supported reform of any kind: priests, professors, students, farmers, union organizers, protesters of election fraud, including UUSC partners. In 1977, UUSC President Dick Scobie visited El Salvador, interviewing victims and witnesses of government-sponsored violence, and met with the country's Catholic Archbishop, Oscar Romero. When Dick asked, "What can we do?" his response, "Tell the world what is happening here." But how could a small organization like the Service Committee tell the world? It organized trips for members of Congress to go to El Salvador to see for themselves what the U.S. government was supporting. Representative Robert Drinan, a Jesuit, was the first to go, and UUSC's congressional delegations won the reputation in Congress as the best way to see the full picture. As Dick Scobie writes, during the next 15 years, the UUSC sponsored more than 20 delegations, giving more than 30 congresspeople from both parties an incomparable view of the social and political realities in Central America, especially as the Reagan administration expanded U.S. support for right-wing regimes in the 1980s. UUSC's work for a just peace in El Salvador was recognized in 1992 when it was invited as an observer at the signing of the peace accords that formally ended the Civil War. From opposing the Nazis during World War II to opposing the dictatorships in Central America and the United States' involvement with those dictators in the 70s and 80s, through opposing dictators in Myanmar and Nicaragua today, the Service Committee has taken on the hard issues others don't. Based upon the UU principles, which recognize the worth and dignity of every person and the interdependent web of all existence, the Service Committee works in partnership with local human rights organizations in countries where we can make a difference. One of my favorite examples is the partnership we had with a women's organization in India working with the Dalit women, untouchables, who were not allowed to use the water in their village. The women had to walk 3 miles to get water, to carry 3 miles back for their families. Other NGOs would have merely solved the problem by drilling them their own well. Our partners established a wellness clinic for the women and their children and gradually began teaching them not only how to care for themselves and their children, but also how to begin their own little businesses, how to become independent, eventually, how to be leaders. Today, these women who before walked down the streets with their heads down and eyes lowered are not only using the public water, they are leaders in their community. In addition, they started 13 other women's centers in surrounding villages to empower other Dalit women in the same way. Their organization became self-sufficient as well, no longer needing UUSC's support, so the Service Committee was able to move its resources elsewhere to reach others in need of advocates for their human rights. Did we solve the caste system in India? No. Even though India's 3,000-plus-year-old caste system was outlawed in 1950, it prevails. India's latest iteration of its caste system was outlawed its caste system divides Hindus into 4 categories, with the Brahmins at the top. But the Dalits are even out of the pyramid, as they are outcast, deemed so low they're untouchable. No, UUSC didn't change that reality, but it was a catalyst, an early supporter of a local partner which made a difference, empowering these women and changing lives. Another of my favorite examples of the Service Committee's partnership to empower those without was the program in Burkina Faso. Young women, to help their impoverished families, would go to the capital city, Ouagadougou, for work, but often got trapped into prostitution. To help these young women, the Service Committee partnered with an organization which provided sewing training for these young women, then provided sewing machines which they could take back to their villages and create their own businesses making garments. Again, the Service Committee was a catalyst to help the program until it was self-sufficient. Did we change Burkina Faso? No. But this program dramatically changed the lives of many young women. Since its founding during World War II, the Service Committee has developed a reputation of going where others won't, of doing what others will not, of addressing the needs of the marginalized. We were in Central and South America during the turmoil of the 70s and 80s before the U.S. acknowledged its military involvement. We were in Ethiopia before the world knew there was a famine. UUSC was in Eritrea before the world had paid attention to the attacks from Ethiopia. We were partnering in Rwanda before the world responded to the genocide. We were in Darfur long before the celebrities showed up. We were in Kenya before the disputed election turned violent. Our partners were active in nonviolent education efforts in Egypt as the Arab Spring began. We worked with those left behind by the big NGOs after the earthquake in Haiti, then again following Hurricane Matthew. We were in Turkey with a partner that helped Syrian refugees deal with trauma. We were in Hungary, where Viktor Orban vilified refugees from Syria. We are in Hungary today with the partner which is now helping Ukrainian refugees. We are in Myanmar, as we've been for over 25 years, where the Rohingya have faced genocide. We're working with indigenous communities under threat of climate-forced displacement in the Solomon Islands, Kiribati, Alaska, and the Louisiana bayous. We're in Mexico and Arizona, supporting refugees from the violence in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Our work on migrant justice includes the right to safety in Central America, the right to safety on the migrant trail, and human rights in the U.S. immigration system. As many of you know, Doyle and I have visited with partners in Myanmar, Nicaragua, Hungary, Croatia, and Serbia, and have seen firsthand how the partnerships you make possible are changing lives. When we were first invited to visit our partners in Myanmar, I questioned whether the cost of our travel there would be better spent in donations to our partners. We had to meet our partners, a number of our partners, in secret, as their work with the Rohingya made them targets of the controlling military. But we learned from them how important our presence was. They were so very grateful that we were there, grateful to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to be supported. We also learned, yet again, how religion was the source of so much evil. It was the Buddhist monks, through their organization Mabatha, who led the charge against Muslims and the Rohingya. When we were there, access to the internet was relatively new, beyond the military, and most people were walking around with their new smartphones. Even though under the Myanmar system, if they had a phone, they had access to email. Few, except those in businesses connecting to the West, actually used email. Most used almost exclusively Facebook. They communicated with each other on Facebook. And Mabatha quickly became adept at getting its message to everyone on Facebook. It was a message of fear. Fear Muslims, because they were going to take over the country. They were going to force everyone to become a Muslim. They were going to take your wives and daughters and make them their third wives. Even though Muslims were only 4% of the population, they were to be feared, and so eliminated. Christians were 4%, but they weren't a threat, as they were usually connected to dollars from the Western businesses. As we met with the abbot or senior monk of one of the largest Buddhist monasteries, he fully agreed with Mabatha that Muslims were evil and should be removed from Myanmar. The message was so prevailing that there was no upset when Muslims were attacked, and no concern over the genocide and the removal of the Rohingya from Rakhine State. It didn't matter that they had been there for centuries. They didn't belong. The Buddhist monks made that clear. As you know, in February 2021, the Burmese military overthrew the elected government of Myanmar and has killed more than 1,500 civilians and detained over 8,800 peaceful demonstrators trying to resist the military's unjust rule. Over 330,000 people have been internally displaced across Myanmar since the coup. The Service Committee is one of the few international organizations which is still able to get aid into Myanmar to its partners. The power of the UUSC comes from its people, its partners, currently over 50 in more than 20 countries, and the staff that it's had over the years, from Robert Dexter, its first executive director, to Mary Catherine Mourn, its current president. A powerful example of UUSC staff and leadership is Charlie Clements. Some of you have met him. Charlie had a circuitous route to the service committee. He was a distinguished graduate of the Air Force Academy and volunteered for Vietnam. But after 9 months as a pilot flying over 50 missions in Vietnam, he concluded that the war was immoral and refused to fly further missions. That refusal put him in a psychiatric ward before he was discharged. He then went to medical school, and while treating patients, began, as he wrote, to understand that exploitation, poverty, or injustice were often the underlying reasons why people were sick or injured. Following medical school, Charlie joined the staff at Natividad Medical Center in Salinas, California, and began to treat Salvadoran refugees. What he heard from them led him in March 1982 to enter dangerous, rebel-held territory in El Salvador, carrying 75 pounds of medical equipment in a backpack to work as a civilian doctor, where he sometimes had to perform surgery with a razor blade and suture wounds with dental floss. Charlie became president of Physicians for Human Rights, then director of human rights at UUSC, where he continued leading congressional delegations to the region to show members of Congress what the U.S. military was doing despite the Reagan administration's denials. Those 20 delegations to El Salvador and surrounding countries showed a reality that was otherwise not known. In 2003, with a unique understanding of challenging injustice, Charlie became the president and CEO of UUSC. As Charlie wrote, activists in the U.S. are like the tank man in Tiananmen Square in China. We have always had to jump in front of the ship of state to keep it on a self-correcting course. Whether the issue was slavery, labor rights, women's suffrage, civil rights, Vietnam, Central America, Iraq, it is the determined protest of those who will settle for nothing less than justice or peace that have altered the course of history. The moral arc of the universe doesn't bend towards justice by gravity. There are many unique things about the Service Committee, but one of the most important is that it is ours. This is our Unitarian Universalist organization based upon our Unitarian Universalist principles at work in the world. We all contribute to multiple organizations, from Planned Parenthood to the Nature Conservancy, from the Southern Poverty Law Center to AIDS Delaware, from Human Rights Watch to Compassion and Choices. They all do good work. But UUSC is based upon our UU principles, and it needs our support to do its work. In addition, it will use your money well. I've been involved with the Service Committee now for nearly 40 years. I served on the board, was co-chairperson of the 50th Anniversary Capital Campaign, then chairperson of the Sustaining Gifts Committee, and Doyle and I continue as members of the Stewardship Circle. I give to quite a number of organizations which do good things. But I've learned that every dollar I give to the Service Committee will do more to change lives and communities than those dollars will do with any other organization. UUSC's work is made possible by you and members of UU congregations across the country. UUSC is affiliated with the Unitarian Universalist Association, but it receives no UUA funding. Every dollar makes a difference. During the Guest at Your Table program, donations of $150 or more are eligible to be matched by the UU congregation of Shelter Rock in Manhasset, New York. When Charlie Clemens asked what sustains him, he responded with a quote from the Talmud: "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. Do justly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it."
Well, that gave us a lot of information, don't you think? A lot of history. A lot of history that we can be pleased with. I don't know if we want to be proud of it, but we could be. But it should give us hope and courage to move on, to do better and bigger things. Beverley indicated that she and I have been committed to the work of the Service Committee for many years, and that's true. And it's because of what this church community does with the Service Committee that makes me want to continue to be a member of this congregation. Now, that may sound a little strange, but if this church got rid of the connection and the partnership with the Service Committee, I might look for another church home. That's how important the work of the Service Committee is to me. Now, as Beverley indicated, we are members of the Stewardship Circle of UUSC. And what does that mean? Well, this is a little bit of a testimony, I guess. What it means is that we make an annual pledge to the Service Committee of $5,000 or more. And I'm very pleased to be able to do that. I'm delighted, having come from a very, I think I could say poor and unresourced family. The fact that I have the resources now to be able to do what we do with UUSC is a good thing. I'm delighted. And as long as I live, I want to be useful, and I want to be useful as long as I live. And part of that usefulness has to do with working in partnership with the Service Committee. So, I hope some of you will join us. I suspect some of you could, be members of the Stewardship Circle and have some of the experiences that we've had and know that we're making a difference throughout the world. So think about that. And if you want more information, don't hesitate to ask. We'll be glad to talk about it. Okay, but today, for our stewardship moment, I want to give you a challenge. The challenge is related to my favorite hobby. Now, I suppose most of you know what my favorite hobby is. That's right, beekeeping. And you know, just a couple of side comments. One of the things I really have enjoyed in recent years with the Stewardship Circle is that I've met other beekeepers at the Stewardship Circle. There's one in Illinois. There's one in New York. There's one in California. And when we get together, guess what we talk about? The pleasure of being beekeepers. Well, many of you know that I've been donating honey for you to buy for quite a few years, right? Yeah, and many of you buy the honey. And all the proceeds from the sale of that honey go to UUSC. So a few years ago, we had a great year. I think we sold, I donated and you bought about 150 pounds of honey. And that generated $1,500 to go to the service committee. So that's significant. And in other years, we've averaged around $1,000 in honey sales to go to the service committee. Well, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and I'm going to ask you to buy all the honey that I can donate. And I will match what you pay for that honey to make it even that more important as it goes to the service committee. What about that? I'm not well acquainted with the matching process, but I think I know the basics. And so if you buy the honey, not only what you pay for will go to the service committee, but I will double it, make it that more important. So just in concrete terms, a pound of honey is sold for $10. So if you buy a pound of honey, that's what you pay. But I'll make it become $20. And, you know, many of you, and I'm looking at Hans Franke, many of you buy honey and give to other people. And so you may buy 4 or 5 or even 10 jars of honey. Well, just imagine that. What I'm... If, say, you bought 5 jars of honey to give to family and friends for Christmas, that would have a value of $50. Well, it becomes a value of $100 because of the match that I'm offering. So that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? $100, having paid only $50 to go to the service committee. And why am I doing this? Well, I think it's a kind of a unique and fun way to participate, to be in partnership with who we are as a church, be in partnership with the service committee, and know that as we do these sorts of things, we are making a difference in the world. So, I have some honey in the back today. But I'll take orders. If you want to give me an order for Christmas or whatever, feel free to do that, and we can work out the details. So that's my challenge and my offer to you as part of the stewardship moment today. And just let me say that you know, stewardship is a important part of who we are and what we do as members of this church. And I'd like to read from what amounts to a plaque in our kitchen. And it's attributed to Emerson or Ruskin or Carlyle. And they all wrote different versions of it. But listen to this quote. The headline is, "Live. The purpose of life is to be useful, to be responsible, to be compassionate. It is above all to matter, to count, to stand for something, to have made some difference." That's a good quote. We try to live by it, and I would invite you to try to live by it too. Be useful, make a difference wherever you can. And as we think of our stewardship moment, in my mind, that's being a good steward. So let's be good stewards as we draw our service or our stewardship time to a close today. And let's recount the ways that we can give. Now, we generally start with number 1. I'm going to start with number 4, just to turn things upside down a little bit. So if you have a smartphone, you can give by using the Vanco app, Vanco Mobile Faith Engagement app. Please do that if you can. Or you can go to the church website and click on Donate and make your donation that way. Make your contribution to the church. But you can also go into the UUSC website and click on the secure donation link there, and you can make a contribution to UUSC. Or you can mail a check to the church. Just make out a check to the church, put it in the mail, and they will be glad to receive it. But you can also put another check in that envelope and make it out to UUSC, and the church will pass it on to UUSC. Very convenient to do that. And the fourth way is there's a box at the back of the sanctuary, and you can put cash in it or checks. So again, you can write it 2 checks. You can put it in the box. One to the church to support the work of this community, or you can write another check to UUSC, put it in the box, and it'll be routed on to the service committee. I've been kind of joking around a little bit, but the bottom line is we are fairly comfortable people, wouldn't you say? But there's so many people in the world who are not comfortable. They're dealing with injustice all the time. And through our donations, however we make them, we are helping people throughout the world. We're doing our little part to make the world a better place. So with that, let's dedicate our offering today. And let's think in terms of our dedication to both the church and to the service committee as we repeat together. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings. Just one other quick thing. These little boxes, if you want to take one, please do. Put a check in it and put it in the box at the back, and guess what? It's a contribution to UUSC. Thank you. And now, I'd like to introduce our hymn number 121. Let's sing it together. We'll build a land.
We'll stations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, live in great peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where laws of righteousness stand erect. Come, build the land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, live in great peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Please be seated. And as we come to the end of our service and extinguish our chalice today, let's think of the words that I mentioned early on. So let's let the light of the chalice give us hope. Let the light of the chalice give us courage. And let it lead us to take action.
Following the closing words, we're most fortunate to have member Leah Orchnik performing her original work, Sometimes Change is Best. Now again, the words which Charlie Clemens has said sustain him from the Talmud. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. Do justly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it.
Traditions are foundations, they're what